Well met, everyone. I am Rich DeLitch. This is my review of Spells and Incantations. This is a PDF by, let's just call it Colin, called Spells and Incantations. I downloaded this from DM's Guild this morning for $1.50. We have 13 pages. So what is this? The simplest way is for me to simply just read to you what the author has here. This is where I'm at. The spells in the player's handbook are well thought out and cover nearly all circumstances that a spellcaster might encounter and utilities they might have need of. But, by their own admission, they are only the most commonly known spells. The world is a wide and wild place, and many strange and wondrous magics yet lurk in it, either forgotten or yet to be discovered. This supplement looks to add a few such spells to the game. So, there you go. That's what you have. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a couple of the spells. We'll go through my review system. For the sake of this review, because we're looking at a list of new spells, I am not going to cover art. I do not believe it is needed, so therefore you won't see the review on art. We're going to talk about layout, design, and editing, and then we're going to talk about content. I'll explain a little bit of my point system in case this is your first time looking at any of my reviews, and then I will give you a final score, and throughout the whole document, or the video I should say, you will get a few of my thoughts and my words. And at the end of this all, my goal, as with all of my reviews, are to try and indicate to you and inform you as to whether or not this might be some content that's a good fit for you and your gaming group. First off, really, really good, familiar look, right? It looks like official. I've gone through graphic design 101, that type of stuff. I'm always fascinated with these type of things. I've learned about what fonts have been used or what's most likely used from WotC for their official titles and whatnot, and they've used the same thing here. You've got this red sort of swoosh down underneath it. You've got the same sort of ripped, torn banner. You've got the logos. The artwork is really well done. I like that it has a tome, a spell book, but yet you have that very grungy kind of parchment feel over the top. It's just really well done, and it's very familiar. It makes this look, for $1.50, it looks official. As we scroll down into it, you've got beautiful pages. The layout is really good, good contrast, legible. The writing is really well done. I've gone through it pretty well. I haven't found any spelling errors, things like that. The spell lists themselves are first organized in alphabetical order based on class. So, as is obviously seen here, you've got the spells in level order, starting from cantrips up to 9th level for Bard. You've got the same for clerics, and so on. And then in the book itself, when you get into the spell descriptions, they are fully alphabetized. They're not by class, they're just alphabetical. It's the same thing you're going to find in Xanathar's or Player's Handbook. So once again, very familiar. So the layout, the organization of everything is as expected, and it's really well done. And then at the very back, there is an index, which does organize spells by level. So you can kind of, navigate your way in that regard. It doesn't have a page number associated with it, so that's not a big deal though, because number one, you're looking through PDF, which the efficiency of that is I can simply type in a number and jump where I need to. But there's only 13 pages to navigate through, but just I know, all right, my PCs have now reached 5th level. I want to look at level 3, 2, and 1 spells, and I can quickly find that I only need to read about these ones or these ones and so on. So it's really well laid out. The flourishes around the page borders and whatnot, and the fact that it shows up as a 2, I don't know if that's just my interface through Adobe Acrobat or my reader. Most of the time when I do these reviews, there's always a single page as there is with the cover. But as I scroll through, there's a nice 2-page layout, and then you have this really cool design element and flourish, which matches up together. So really smooth, nice clean touch. As I said, everything's presented well in columns. The font is outstanding. Yes, there's no artwork, and I'm not reviewing that, but there's some small little details of things sort of at transparent, certain transparency in the background. So you've got like this magical rune. As you get through, you've got these symbols down here, which is a really nice touch, yet it's not conflicting with conveying the information, the readability of something. So there's a little bit of artwork here, but when I say I'm not reviewing artwork is simply because, just as in the Player's Handbook, you're not going to see art for what Archer's Ammunition or Astral Snare is going to look like. But overall, it's perfect. So for layout, design, and editing, I have to give this 2 out of 2. There's nothing wrong here at all, and I believe it's something that other creators out there should certainly emulate. It looks that good. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of it all, right? We're going to talk about the content. So as we scroll through, as I said, you've got your spells in the sort of table of contents, if you will, listed by class alphabetically. So Bard, Cleric, Druid, Paladin, Ranger, Sorcerer, and Wizard. And Warlock as well. But we'll go through the spell descriptions. So I'm just going to pick out a couple. What we have here is the layout, as I said, is outstanding. It's very familiar. You have the name of the spell. You have what school it's from. I always wish there was something, when you get into these sections, just as in the player's handbook, if there was like a little italicized thing or something that would indicate what spell list these are on, right? Now, I understand, and what I mean is, let's say Archer's Ammunition. Well, as I scroll through, just thinking of it, it should be on the Ranger spell list, right? And as I scroll through, there it is. It's not on the Paladin. Okay, it's not on the Bard. It's not on the Cleric. It's not in Sorcerer at all. It is on Druid, on Wizard, and that's it, right? And what I mean is just, you know how in like D&D Beyond, there's a little C that'll indicate whether something requires concentration. You'll see them on the spell cards as well. And yes, you'll see an indication even here with the letter R of which things are a ritual, just like it says here. But it would just be kind of cool if this had a little, in future content. I understand Wizards is not going to reproduce a lot of their books, but in future content, if there was just some indication in another way that I can quickly identify who gets access to these spells. But whatever. So we're looking at a one action, it's a range of touch. You basically touch a quiver that has ammunition in it, and for the duration, you get 30 pieces of ammunition in the quiver, become magical, so that's important because you now have various creatures that have resistance when they're hit by something that's not magical. This now overrides that. And those arrows deal an additional 1d6 piercing. The other thing I really like, though, is on each missed attack with an enchanted arrow, you have to make a wisdom saving throw versus a DC 8 plus the number of expended enchanted pieces of ammunition. So as you spend more, you're going to have a harder time of maintaining this spell effect. And once you fail that, the spell ends. So it's a good way of sort of wrangling in whether someone would figure out how to break this. It's a cool management thing where it's something that I'm confident in bringing to my table in any campaign, because it enables, as I said, a spell, non-magical ammo to now be magical. It deals additional damage, but it's not going to last forever, right? Because eventually that DC is definitely going to get unwieldy. If I've spent 20 pieces of ammunition, I'm assuming, if I read this right, wisdom saving throw with a DC equal to 8 plus the number. So now I have a DC 28, right? That's going to be very difficult to make that saving throw. Most likely the spell effect is going to end, but I've already gotten 20 uses out of this level 2 spell. So really cool. I like that, it has the components and things fit with flavor and style. It's a goose feather and a shard of obsidian. So really cool touch. If I was to not fast forward necessarily, but if I was to jump ahead, take a look at Conjure Shelter. So we have a 3rd level conjuration. It can be cast as a ritual. Okay. Very good. You have a handful of dry straw. Neat little touch. Now, what I really love about this is there's so much flavor to a lot of these spells, both in conjunction with what components are used and what the name of the spell is and what you think a spell named that would do. But even within the description itself, it gives so much roleplay, yet there's an obvious mechanical effect of something that happens. When you cast this spell, this sounds no different than me giving a description of you walking upon a village and you see a lone building. For example, excuse me here. Hold on. Okay.
When you cast the spell, you summon a thatched roof hut from a pocket dimension to a location within range. The shelter is 50 feet on either side, square with a thatched roof, 1 foot thick stone walls, a wood plank floor, and a chimney. The door is wooden without latch or bar, and there are shuttered windows. The windows do not have glass, but the shutters open upwards to prevent rain entering. Inside is a pleasantly crackling hearth fire that never seems to need to be fed. a bed that would comfortably sleep 3 that is piled high with furs, a large wooden slab of a table with 8 chairs crowded around it, and a trapdoor into a below-ground larder and root cellar. The first time the hut is conjured, there are no food goods stored in it.
The hut can be dismissed as a bonus action. Any items or food goods left within the hut remain there when the hut is dismissed and reappear with it the next time the hut is conjured. Its duration is 10 days, but as indicated, you can dismiss it, you can store things in it. Just all of this goodness right here is so beautifully well done in that, yeah, the mechanical is you're conjuring a hut, but it gives you so much flavor. Now, even though I know I went off on that spell, and there's other spells that I went through, and I've gone through it a little bit, of what, kind of just thinking initially of what might I want to cover in this review, I started to then have a little bit of concerns with the content. And the reason why is this, right? As I went through and I read about the 9th school of magic, 8 disciplines of magic are known to those who practice the arcane arts, right? We know those. It says here, though, that, well, the short of it is, chronomancy is a new magical type, a new school of magic that's introduced here. Now, there wasn't anything that listed about chronomancy being something that a wizard can specialize in. You know how a wizard can specialize in evocation magic, and it enables them to sort of shape evocation spells. And you have the diviner, who's known for portent. And there's certain attributes where as you specialize, it is a huge, huge thing. It separates one wizard from another. It didn't do that with chronomancy. So I kind of thought initially, well, why include it in there if you're not going to have, nuances and details of, am I just now going to allow my players to cast chronomancy spells, but yet no one can ever specialize in it because I don't understand what this is? Are we just entirely talking about flavor of the Netheril Empire, which does make sense with chronomancy, but now that's very Forgotten Realms specific, right? And I started to go through it, and yes, the chronomancy spells have this flavor and this rhythm to them that feels very time-oriented. I'm thinking World of Warcraft stuff, and I don't know what her name is. There's a little gnome. Chromie? Something like that? So it made sense in that regard, but it didn't feel fleshed out enough. And when I read this is my whole tangent on what I'm going about with the Conjure Shelter here. When I read this, it was beautifully well done, but then I thought, am I just getting sort of a different version of Leomund's Tiny Hut? And then what I did is I went back to the beginning, and this is completely my fault, and that's why I'm going at it in this order in the review. As I went back, let me just read this to you. Not all of these spells have been added for players, and some are not even available to them, such as the 10th level spells. There's level 10 spells in here. And chronomancy spells that were once wielded by the now extinct Netherese of Faerun in the Forgotten Realms setting. Chronomancy spells by default do not appear on any class spell list. The DM may choose to allow players access to these as class spells, or as players uncover them in the world. Others, while available to players, are meant more as an explanation to magics in the world the players might encounter, such as magic items and layer effects. I have tried to write both world and player spells that serve as a specific role in the world, in a world where it is accepted that many thousands, if not tens of thousands of years have passed since the dawn of intelligent races. Why have they not industrialized? So, I have tried to limit myself to filling a niche in that theme that the player's handbook has not addressed. Though there are some areas where two spells may overlap, Conjure Shelter here and Leomund's Tiny Hut, which is in the PHP, the spells presented here should offer some utility that the PHP spell does not. In this case, the amount of accommodation both in size and comfort at the expense of protection from harm. It was my bad that I didn't read through all of this in the beginning. I wanted to get into the spells, and as I started asking questions of, is this fixing something? That's the core of content, right? Is first and foremost, when I'm just sure I can rate it and simply say, am I getting my money's worth? But first off, is it something that I need from my group? I understand I have to approach content now with a very different perspective because I'm presenting it in video format to highlight to others whether this is something they should get. But personally, first I will often go through the list. Well, number one is first, can I afford it? It can be the world's most highly reviewed content. If it's $700, then I've got to make some considerations, right? But beyond that, I will first think, is this something that I want? Me personally as a DM, not attaching it to any game or campaign, even at my table, just me personally. Is it fixing a problem that I have or that my mind can't wrangle? And I feel like maybe this author, this creator has fixed that for me in my head. So I will look at, is it of use to me? Then, of course, can I bring it to my table as something that I'm going to use right now immediately? But beyond that, is it something that will at least inspire me? It's not a fit for my current campaign, for my group, for my table, but it inspires me. And as DMs have freedom to do, it makes me want to twist it, manipulate it, and make some changes to make it sort of my own, or create my own version of something like it, inspired by what's there. And what I really love about the approach to a spell like Conjure Shelter, and now that I've read through that, I like that it's what I call the video game equivalent of its horizontal progression versus vertical progression. Magic the Gathering did this. I'm an old school Magic player, right? Where you have a spell that does a certain thing for one mana. 1 green plus 3. What'll happen, though, is later on as they print things, 20 years go by, players have played that card, they've broken it, they've abused it. The designers will then say, okay, we're now going to create something that gives plus 3, but it now costs a green and a colorless. So it costs twice as much. Hearthstone does the same thing. Often in design, you have this vertical change, this progression, or this nerfing thing. And what happens with that, though, is either they move the really powerful thing, the thing that cost 1, to some sort of restricted, reserved, banned list, or accessible only in certain game modes, or it just simply means that something has gotten better or worse, there's no need to have the other card anymore, or the other thing. If this was just more of the same and better, why would you ever cast Leomund's Tiny Hut? Whereas horizontal progression is more of like talent trees and various things in game design and video games, where you're not necessarily getting something weaker or more powerful, so you're not conflicting with what you already have and what you've been used to for a year. You're just getting something a little different flavor. And by describing, as I did, it sounded so epic that I just want to make this shelter. Sure, another player at the table might be like, dude, but that's not going to protect us like the hut. But I like that it has that approach to it of just trying to give you other options, and you're not necessarily having to wrangle whether this is clearly a replacement for that. Because thematically, you might have a... Real quick, let me just see who spell list it's on. It's on a wizard. It's on a... Not the ranger. It's not the bard. It's on the druid. So there you go. That's what I was looking for. This Conjure Shelter, if you're this sort of village going, wood, right? I don't like metal. I don't like steel. I don't like the flash of that type of thing. I just want very organic. This might be a better fit than Leomund's. I don't even know if Leomund's is on the druid spell list. Doesn't matter. But this is just a better fit because it fits flavor and theme-wise. So you're looking at this horizontal progression to spells. That gives me the confidence as I go through it that I'm going to get more of that. Therefore, it automatically makes me believe that I can bring it to the table, because there's confidence there that it's not just something that the author is just trying to create some unbalanced thing, right? The equivalent of, well, why is that just a fireball at level 1? What the hell is the point of casting fireball as a 3rd level spell anymore? You know what I mean? And you don't want to step on those toes. And I like that it goes in that direction. Let's take a look at a couple of more. This one's beautiful. Mass Flaming Weapon. It's an 8th level conjuration. You have a range of 500 feet, 1 minute casting time. When you cast this spell, it's a concentration. While touching a non-magical weapon, it and each non-magical weapon of the same type that you are aware of and choose to affect within range, within the 500 feet, begins burning for the duration. Each affected weapon deals an additional d4 fire, and it counts as magical. For an 8th level spell, maybe it sounds a little underwhelming. Maybe it is. I'm not trying to wrangle in the balance of it. But flavor-wise, I like that it gives you everything fire damage, and most importantly, it allows it's considered a magic weapon now. But when we think of spoilers, Game of Thrones, I think episode 3, season 8, spoilers. When we think of the Battle of Winterfell, the lady, I don't know, Melisandre, whatever, the red lady, the red witch, whatever her name is, she comes out and she holds the weapon of the Dothraki, and she sets it on fire, and then down the line, all magical, right? All fire. Therefore, then it seems like it can wrangle in the 8th level aspect of it a little more, because you're affecting an entire army's worth of stuff. Such cool flavor and theme. And yes, it's 8th level, but it's very easy to say, well, this is an 8th level spell. Let's add 7d6 fire damage to something. It's 8th level, right? But that can snowball quickly. And then you have to now look at every spell of 7th and 6th and 5th and go on down the list of what classes, who can cast it. Is there a concentration? What are the, you know what I mean? And there's so much to deal with because you're dealing with a fireball on a blade by keeping it so little, almost underwhelming, but yet adding that it affects such a large roleplay aspect, just as it did in the Battle of Winterfell. You might change the entire morale of an entire army, and the impressive nature of you casting that spell and the enemy seeing that is like, holy shit, what are we about to go against now? So it has just some really, really cool flavor like that. I'm not going to go over too many more because this video is getting long enough as it is. Just know that when we look at these spells, it's really, really well done. That's all I want to cover on as far as specific spells. There's a decent amount here. It's really well done. I mean, you can look at the spells here. We've got 3 cantrips, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And 5 is 22, 23, 24 plus 3, 6 is 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39 spells. 2 of them being 10th level spells. So 39 spells, 13 pages, well organized. Everything is tip-top shape. You're getting that horizontal progression as I went over. It feels like they're just different, a lot of flavor, really cool things like that for $1.50. Okay, so the final thoughts as far as content. When I mentioned how sometimes content is there that I can immediately bring to my table and it feels like it's going to be a fit for me and I want to use it. But most importantly, it inspires me. Whenever something that's as simple as a mechanical thing of I'm giving you a spell list, I'm giving you magic items, I'm giving you a list of things, I'm giving you charts, mechanical things that you would write on your character sheet, right? That for the most part are going to happen during combat and things like this. But whenever those things start to plant the seeds of adventure and story in my head, now you're talking about content that for $1.50 is helping me get through an entire night of gameplay. I recently did watching Avengers, $20 on a movie ticket, whatever, $15 plus popcorn for 2 hours, 3 hours of entertainment. If for $1.50 this can get me through 7 hours of gameplay, obviously it's worth it. I like the flavor of Chronomancy being there. It's saying that it's not really on anyone's spell list, but yet they're there. I run 10 players at my table. I can easily have 3-4 melee, a couple of healers, and I've still got 4 or 5 characters left. So they can run the entire spectrum of casters. They can be a ranger, a bard, a druid, a wizard, a sorcerer, and a warlock. All of them at my table. And imagine if they come upon some lingering magical effect. How often have I wanted to create something? Some effect that's on a tower, the bottom of a locked dungeon, an effect that's on a dead body, something that maybe some boss that's not, I sort of wrangled it and made it up through the monster manual and the DMG, and I put together some creature. It's not something that they can quantify and they don't know what his capabilities are. I've wanted to create this magical effect or this lingering thing or some aspect of magic that the PCs can't wrap their heads around. They can't just make arcana checks and figure out what the hell's going on. It creates a mystery. It creates something, a catalyst for the group to want to look further. It creates something that the wizard and the sorcerer can be excited about. They now say, I don't know what spell that is. I've never seen that effect before. Now, the real life player is also going to think, this is not on my spell list. I've never heard of a spell that did this. That's something way back in first edition that was kind of like it, but it's definitely not in 5th. But it gets that player searching for answers. Is there a scroll with it? Can I get something like that and put it in my spell book? I like that. And when you create spells like the Chronomancy stuff and just you have the overall idea of creating content that may give the DM an answer as to how he can have certain magical effects in play, but they're not necessarily attached to any given class's spell list, it reminds us all that magic can be mysterious, it can be wondrous, it can be magical, but most importantly, the reason why it has those 3 attributes, wondrous, mysterious, magical, is oftentimes because it can also have an element of unknown, right? We don't understand it. We can't ever wrap our hands completely around it. And when you see a lingering spell effect and you say, well, I know that that's the third level spell. You start to quantify it a little too much, right? It's like taking a piece of art and you know that's an apple. As beautifully well done as the apple is, you know it's an apple. But when you see some why do people like minimalism or abstract art? Or this is my art background coming in here. I've studied and gone through entire college courses discussing art. But when you have that element of beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and you looking at something and you trying to imagine what that is yourself, but there's no definitive boundaries as to what it is, there's beauty in that. And there is beauty in the spells here. And that's the best compliment I can give it. So where am I at with content? It's a 5 out of 5. This entire thing for $1.50, I said his name, just first name only. I don't want to mispronounce the last name. So Vaudier, I apologize. Colin, you undercharge for this, my man. I'm assuming male. If it's not, I apologize. This is undercharged. It is worth, even though you've got the first 2 pages taken up with a cover and sort of an introduction and some spell lists, and then at the end you've got the appendix and credits, and I've only got maybe 8 to 9 pages of spells, and that's it. I still would have paid $5, 5 times the amount. The content is there. This is what 5 out of 5 means everyone should emulate this, for the simple aspect of this has under-promised and over-delivered. For the cost, it's given me so much more. My mind is, as a creative individual, you've done what I hope every piece of content can do, and it's just really cool flavor, really cool effect. I love it. Well done. So, since we didn't look at art, we're only looking at a 7-point maximum here with content and layout, design, and editing. This is my final score. That's all I have for you folks. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope it's helped you. Take care.